I remember the moment so clearly, the way the sun hit the horizon just as if it knew how to set the tone for everything that was about to unfold. It wasn't supposed to be anything grand, nothing out of the ordinary. I had bought my wife, Emma, a cruise ticket for our 10th anniversary. Something simple, really. A week away from the grind, a chance to reconnect. We had been through a lot, and I thought this was exactly what we needed. A break. Time away from the pressures of life, from the long hours at work, from everything. Just us in the open ocean, and maybe a few cocktails by the pool. I'd arranged the whole thing meticulously. The spa day for her, the fancy dinner reservation, and of course, the cabin with a balcony facing the sea. She was thrilled when she saw the ticket, her eyes lighting up in a way that reminded me of the woman I fell in love with. Everything seemed perfect. The first few days of the trip were exactly as I imagined. We explored the ship, ate too much, talked, laughed, and spent hours lounging in the sun. I can't say I was thinking about anything other than her smile and how at peace I felt with her beside me. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, it started. The slight unease, the tiny things that weren't quite right. Place. It was when we were in the middle of the ocean, with no land in sight, that I first noticed it. Emma had been distant for a few hours. I tried not to notice. Maybe she was just tired or overwhelmed by the luxury of it all. But the longer it went on, the harder it became to ignore. One evening, as the sun dipped below the waterline and the sea turned a deep shade of purple, I was leaning against the balcony railing, watching the waves roll by. Emma was sitting inside, thumbing through the itinerary when she came out to join me. "Have you been feeling all right?" I asked, casually trying to sound unconcerned. She hesitated, her eyes flicking toward me for a split second before looking away. "Yeah, just tired. The sun, you know." I didn't buy it, but I didn't push either. I simply nodded and kept my gaze on the horizon. The days that followed felt off. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, but I began to notice a pattern. Emma's behavior was suddenly different. She would often disappear for hours, telling me she was exploring or checking out the onboard activities, but I couldn't help but feel a knot in my stomach. There was something about her responses, something evasive. I tried to shrug it off. We were on vacation after all. Maybe she was just enjoying her own space. But there were little things that nodded me, little oddities that didn't make sense. Like when she returned from one of her solo outings with a strange, far-off look in her eyes, or when she said she'd been talking to a fellow passenger who happened to be a stranger to someone I'd never seen before. One evening, she asked if I minded her having a late dinner with some of the people she'd met on the cruise. A few hours later, I walked by the restaurant where she said she'd be. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I overheard her laugh, the one that used to make me feel like everything was right with the world. It wasn't the same laugh. It was different. Lighter. More free. I froze in my tracks. It wasn't just the laughter that unsettled me, it was the fact that I didn't know who she was laughing with. I couldn't see her face through the window, but I could see her body language relaxed, too relaxed, like she didn't have a care in the world. I stood there, my mind racing. Something was off. But what I thought about confronting her. I thought about marching inside and demanding to know exactly what she was doing. But I didn't. I couldn't. There was something inside me I needed to find out on my own, even though I knew I might not like the truth. The turning point came 3 days later. I woke up early, unable to sleep. I decided to take a walk around the deck, the cool morning doing air, little to calm the rising unease. As I rounded the corner near one of the lower-level lounges, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Emma was sitting with him. It wasn't the fact that she was sitting with someone that shocked me. We'd both met people on the ship, made small talk, but it was the man she was sitting with. He was tall, dark-haired, and wearing a casual suit that looked too expensive for a cruise ship. What caught my attention, though, was the way he was looking at her. It was the kind of look that said more than words ever could. I felt my stomach drop. I was frozen, standing there, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then, just as I was about to step forward, I noticed something else, a small silver bracelet on Emma's wrist. It was the same bracelet she had gotten from me on our honeymoon, the one that meant more than anything. I could barely breathe as I watched her laugh at something he said, her hand brushing against his. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run toward them and demand answers. But I stood there, paralyzed by the scene before me. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Was this why she'd been distant lately? Was I a fool to not see it sooner? I had to know the truth. So I did what anyone would do when they felt the ground crumbling beneath them. I approached them. "Emma," I said, my voice tight with emotion. She looked up, startled, as if she hadn't expected me to find her. The man with her stiffened, his eyes locking with mine. I could see the guilt on her face as she stood up, quickly. "Jimmy, I can explain. I didn't let her." "Who is this guy?" She glanced at the man, then back at me, her face pale. "This is Marco. He's a friend from work. We just what?" I interrupted, the pain in my chest, so sharp it almost took my breath away. "What exactly is going on here, Emma?" She hesitated, glancing at Marco again. He didn't speak, just stared at the ground, his hands in his pockets. "I never meant for it to happen, Jimmy," she finally whispered, her voice shaking. "It's not what you think." "Then what is it, Emma?" I demanded. "Tell me what this is." Her face crumbled as she let out a quiet sob. "I don't know when it started, but I've been having an affair with Marco. I'm so sorry. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't know how. I never meant to hurt you. I thought maybe if I kept it a secret, I could just go on pretending everything was fine. But it isn't, and I've ruined everything." For a moment, all I could do was stare at her, the woman I had once shared everything with, the woman I thought I knew so well. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. How could she do this? Why didn't I see the signs? The air between us crackled with tension. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, betrayal, anger, confusion, disbelief, but what cut through the chaos was the overwhelming sense of loss. I had given her everything. I had trusted her completely. And now standing before me was this stranger, the man who had taken my place in her life, and the woman who had shattered everything I thought was true. I couldn't hold back any longer. "How long, Emma?" I spat, my voice trembling. "How long have you been lying to me?" I don't know." She cried. "It just happened. I didn't want it to, but it did, and I couldn't stop it." "You didn't want to stop it?" I yelled, my voice shaking with rage. "You chose this. You chose him over me." She flinched, but I didn't care. I needed her to understand the gravity of what she'd done. "I've ruined everything, Jimmy," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." I turned away, trying to compose myself. There was a moment of silence. Then I heard Marco's voice. "I'm sorry, man," he said softly, his words carrying an apology that felt hollow. "I never meant to be the one to hurt you." I didn't respond. What could I say to him? I wanted to punch him, to scream at him, but in the end, I didn't. What good would it do? The damage was done. In the days that followed, I did what anyone would do in my situation. I avoided Emma as much as possible. I couldn't even bring myself to look at her. Eventually, we had a conversation. A real one. She was full of apologies, but I knew it was too late for that. Trust, once broken, can never truly be repaired. We ended things. There was no dramatic goodbye or big confrontation. It wasn't necessary. I had already made my decision. It was over. but through the pain and heartache, I learned something valuable. I learned that sometimes the hardest thing is accepting the truth, no matter how painful it may be. I learned that people change, and sometimes they drift apart, even when you think you're doing everything right. It's been months since that day. I've moved on. I'm not sure I'll ever fully understand what happened on that cruise, but I found peace in the end. It was a lesson I had to learn. Trust is fragile, and even when it feels invincible, can fade without warning.